This dude is a 23-year-old man with a 12-year-old girlfriend. He's telling her he's actually a 300-year-old reincarnated werewolf that needed to drink blood to survive. It's been 18 years since the Richardson family murders. This tragedy shook Alberta, Canada to its core. On April 23rd, 2006, 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson and her 23-year-old boyfriend, Jeremy, brutally unalived her parents, Mark and Deborah Richardson, and her 8-year-old brother, Jacob. Jasmine Richardson was born on October 1993. Jasmine's brother, Jacob, was born a few years later, completing their tight-knit middle-class family. Her family was very wholesome and happy. Jasmine was a typical girl. She had many friends, did well in school, and was involved in her school's programs. However, things began to change in the summer of 2005, which is normal for teenagers, but not so much her. During that summer, Jasmine began to hang out with a group of goth kids who would usually stay at the mall. Despite her parents' disapproval, she started hanging out with them. She was rebelling. Although Jasmine was a 12-year-old girl, because of the way she dressed, she could pass off as someone older, like a 15 to 18-year-old. In that goth group was a 23-year-old Jeremy Steik, whose life was almost the complete opposite of Jasmine's. Jeremy Steik, born in January of 1983, had a very rough life. He lived with his alcoholic mother and biological father, who was also an alcoholic. His mother had other boyfriends who would also physically harm him. He was also bullied in school. Because of this, he struggled with substance abuse and self harm since he was 14. He was diagnosed with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which means that although he was 22 years old, his mental age was that of a 14 to 16-year-old, which made it easier for him to relate to younger individuals like Jasmine. He was also well liked by them because he could buy them alcohol. At around 2005, desperate to belong, Jeremy started hanging out with the goth kids at the mall. He would wear a vial of blood around his neck as a necklace. He would tell people that he was a 300-year-old reincarnated werewolf, so he was taking it a step forward. He would even say that he needed to eat blood to survive and was pretty open about this. He'd make cookies with blood in them. And this is when he met Jasmine through mutual friends. By Valentine's Day of 2006, Jeremy and Jasmine were secretly dating. Jasmine's parents were unaware of the relationship, but they noticed her behavior changing. For example, she would leave her little brother alone to go to the mall, and she stopped wanting to go to her extracurricular activities, and her non goth friends stopped talking to her. They took away her computer and phone, and they even began to go to family counseling altogether. Her behavior did improve, and at this point, her parents agreed to let her go to a punk rock show. However, the agreement was that both of her parents would have to tag along. During the show, Jasmine wandered off, and her parents went to go look for her, and they found her and Jeremy making out. They were so furious and grounded her, taking her phone and computer away. Despite their efforts, Jasmine continued to see Jeremy in secret. She would chat with him online, she would sneak out with him to his trailer, and she had become so angry and upset. She felt misunderstood, and so she told Jeremy that she had a plan. She would tell him, quote, "It begins with me killing them and ends with me living with you," unquote. Jeremy would respond by saying, quote, "I love your plan, but we need to get a little more creative with like the details and stuff," end quote. Early morning on April 23rd, 2006, Jeremy and his friends watched the movie Natural Born Killers, and they drank a bunch of alcohol and did a few illegal substances. He would later enter the Richardson family and stab Deborah to death in the basement. Mark heard her screams and went to confront Jeremy, but he was overpowered and he was then unalived. Jacob was also stabbed to death, though it's unclear if it was Jasmine or Jeremy that delivered the fatal blows. On the evening of April 23rd, 2006, a 6-year-old boy who was a neighbor of the Richardsons wanted to play with Jacob and went to go knock on the door, but no one answered the door. He knew that they had to be home because the two vehicles were there, and so he looked through the basement window and he was shocked to find the blood covered bodies laying there. He went and got his mom, and they called the police. When the police arrived, they found Deborah and Mark's body in the basement next to a screwdriver and a sharp kitchen utensil. When the police went upstairs, they found little Jacob's body tucked in his bed. It appeared that he tried to use a toy lightsaber to try and defend himself. After investigators saw family pictures in the home of Jasmine, the police were worried that Jasmine might have been a victim too. They thought that maybe she had been kidnapped. Detectives found a drawing in Jasmine's school locker of a girl that had unalived her entire family by changing the sprinkler system to pour out gasoline instead of water. They would also later find the chats between Jasmine and Jeremy. The next day, Jeremy, Jasmine, and their friend Casey Lancaster were arrested in the town of Leader, which was about 100 miles away. Casey had driven them there. All three were arrested. Jasmine and Jeremy were found guilty in November 2007. Jasmine was sentenced to 10 years, which was the maximum in Canada for a minor, with time in a mental health facility, and she also received some probation. She was diagnosed with conduct disorder and she began to attend university while she was incarcerated. Jasmine was fully released in May 6, 2016 with a new identity, and her record was expunged in 2020, which means she can get any job that she'd like and doesn't have to disclose what she did to anybody. Jeremy Stank was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences in December 2008. This case remains a haunting reminder of how vulnerable young minds can be influenced and the devastating consequences that can follow. Hopefully, Jeremy won't have an issue with his 3 consecutive life sentences, considering he's a 300-year-old werewolf. But that's just my opinion. I'm just some dude on TikTok. Catch you later.